I was on a stretcher when I called my mom. I need you. Emergency surgery. Please just grab my kids. She sighed and said, you've always had a flair for drama. From the hospital bed, I paused the $4,000 per month I'd sent them for 2 years. They called when their card declined. I answered once. I was still strapped to the stretcher when I paused the $4,000 monthly transfer I'd been sending my parents for 2 straight years. That money hit their account like clockwork. Every first of the month. It paid their mortgage, their groceries, their trips to Charleston, their nonsense. But not this time. Because 5 minutes earlier I called my mom from the back of an ambulance with an oxygen mask half off my face and blood pooling somewhere it shouldn't have been. I told her exactly 7 words. I need you. Emergency surgery. Please the kids. And she laughed. Actually laughed. Then she said, you've always had a flair for drama. I stared at the phone like I was watching someone else's life. I hadn't passed out yet, but I could feel my body getting lighter. The paramedics were asking me questions I could barely hear. The only thing I cared about was my children. My son was 6. My daughter was 4. They'd watched me collapse right by the frozen peas at Fairway. I remember their little shoes next to mine as I hit the floor. A woman screamed, someone called 911, and I couldn't even sit up to tell them I'd be okay. So yes, I called my mother. She lived 15 minutes away. He was retired. He had a car. And instead of asking what happened or where the kids were or even saying she was on her way, she told me I was being dramatic. I don't think she realized I was already halfway gone. That's when I texted Lana. We hadn't talked in months, maybe longer, but she was the only person I trusted. She'd known me back in high school, back when I used to lie about bruises and pretend my dad's rage was just stress. My message was short. Hospital. Emergency. Can you get my kids? Her reply. Already in the car. Where are they? That moment, I swear, snapped something clean in me. Because for 2 years I'd been sending my parents money. $4,000 a month. Because they'd fallen on hard times. And because even after everything I wanted to believe they loved me in their own broken way. But lying there hooked up to machines with strangers cutting my clothes off and someone shouting about my blood pressure dropping, all I could hear in my head was my mother's voice saying, you've always had a flair for drama. So I opened my banking app with a shaking hand, found the recurring payment and paused it. No warning. No goodbye. Just stopped it cold. I was wheeled into surgery 5 minutes later. I didn't know if I'd wake up. But if I did, they'd find out real fast what drama looks like. I woke up in a room that smelled like bleach and plastic with a heart monitor chirping every second. The pain hit fast, sharper than I expected, but my first thought wasn't even about that. It was the kids. The nurse said I'd been under for 4 hours. Internal bleeding from a ruptured ovarian cyst. It had almost spread to my organs. She told me it was a good thing I got to the hospital when I did. Another hour and it might have been too late. There were messages on my phone when they finally brought it back. Most were from Lana. Got them. They're okay. Your daughter cried a little but fell asleep on my couch. I'll keep them as long as you need. I just stared at the screen. Didn't even cry. Just silence. I should have felt relief. Gratitude. And I did somewhere under the fog. But over everything else was a white-hot anger, pulsing louder than the 4-pump in the wall. Because I knew what I didn't see. No missed calls from my mom. No texts. No voicemail. Nothing. She hadn't even bothered to follow up. Not to check if I lived. Not to ask where her grandkids were. And for the first time I didn't take it personally. I didn't spiral. I didn't try to understand her or excuse her or pretend this was new behavior. Instead I stared at my banking app. The canceled payment showed in red. The one that was supposed to hit yesterday. It had always gone through before. Always. I was still staring at it when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up. It was my dad. He didn't say hello. Just launched straight in. Hey Viola, your mom's debit card isn't working. She was at the pharmacy and it got declined. Did something happen with the bank? Not are you okay? Not we heard about the hospital. Not even a fake surface level check-in. Just panic about the money. I said, you're not getting another dollar from me. There was a pause. Like he wasn't sure if I was serious or if this was some kind of test. Then he said, wait, what? What are you talking about? I hung up. No screaming. No second chances. No explanations. Because while they were worrying about swiping a card, I was learning how to sit up again without blacking out. And the woman who was cooking dinner for my kids in a borrowed hoodie and fuzzy socks wasn't even family. He just cared. That was more than I ever got from the two people I used to call my parents. I stayed in the hospital for 3 more days. Recovery was slow and the nurses kept telling me to rest, but I couldn't. Not really. I was too busy rewriting my life. Lana sent photos every morning. My son building Legos on her rug. My daughter drawing on the windows with those markers you can wipe off. Smiling. She made them pancakes and let them sleep in her bed while she took the couch. I asked if it was too much and she told me to shut up and focus on healing. Meanwhile, my parents went completely silent. I thought maybe they'd try to guilt me, spin something. But there was nothing. No apology, no explanation, just an echoing quiet. Until the 3rd night when I got a Facebook message from my mom. It said, "We don't understand what's going on. You're being very dramatic and unfair. We didn't do anything wrong. We're your family, Viola." That word family hit different now. Like an insult. I didn't reply. Instead, I started adding up what I'd actually paid over those 2 years. It wasn't just $4,000 a month. It was emergency payments, repairs, insurance, gifts, little requests that piled up. I scrolled through my banking history until I got nauseous. $112,000. That's what I gave them. They never even sent the kids' birthday cards. My discharge day came and Lana picked me up herself. She didn't ask for gas money, didn't make a big deal out of it. Just opened the door and helped me in. My kids tackled me when I got to her place. I still couldn't bend down, so I just held on to them like a statue while they squeezed my ribs. Later that night, I sat across from Lana at her kitchen table while the kids watched a movie. She was eating noodles out of a mug and talking about how she'd rearranged her shifts to stay with them. She worked at a vet clinic. Lived paycheck to paycheck. No savings. Her couch had a hole in it. And still, she did more for me in 4 days than my parents had done in my entire adult life. That's when I decided. We were leaving. Not just their money. Not just their guilt trips or passive-aggressive comments or fake concern. We were getting all the way out. I pulled up flights. Somewhere warm. Somewhere my kids could build sandcastles. And I bought 3 tickets. Because Lana was coming too. She said no at first. Said she had work and she couldn't leave her cat and she wasn't sure what to pack. But I told her she'd been rescuing people her whole life. It was about time someone returned the favor. We landed in San Diego early, just past sunrise. The air smelled like salt and sunscreen and everything felt brighter than it should. I was still moving slowly, walking with that post-surgery stiffness, but I carried my own bag. That mattered to me. Lana booked the place herself. A 2-bedroom rental with faded pink walls and wind chimes that never stopped. It had a small patio and a path that led straight to the sand. The water was colder than expected, but the kids didn't care. I sat on a lawn chair with a blanket over my legs, watching my son chase waves and my daughter dig holes to nowhere. They didn't ask where we were or why. They were just happy I was upright again. The second morning, Lana made coffee and handed it to me without asking how I slept. That's the kind of person she is. He just knew. We were finally breathing. And then my parents found out. It must have been the canceled payments. The missing money didn't just leave a hole in their bank account. It ripped through their routine. No more morning lattes, no more lunch dates on my dime, no more paying utilities late because they knew I'd always cover the fees. First came the call from my dad's number. I didn't pick up. Then my mom's. Then both of them switching back and forth like I wouldn't notice. I ignored everyone. Then came the text. From my mom. "What are you doing? This is cruel, Viola. We've supported you your whole life." That part actually made me laugh. She must have rewritten history in her head, forgotten how I paid for my own community college classes, how I worked 2 jobs while pregnant, how I once mailed them $300 I couldn't spare because my dad said they were going to lose the house. I left the messages on read. Then they tried Lana. We were sitting in the sand, legs stretched out, sunburned in the way you only get when you stop checking clocks. Lana's phone buzzed once. She squinted at the screen. It was a message from a number she didn't recognize. "We know where you are." No punctuation. No greeting. Not even a name. Just that one sentence. She showed it to me, said, "Do you want me to block them?" I said yes. Later that night, the real storm rolled in. My mom emailed me. Not a short email, a letter. For paragraphs of blame and guilt and twisted logic. She said I was acting like a stranger, that I'd humiliated them, that taking a vacation while they were struggling was unthinkable. She actually wrote that word. Unthinkable. There was no mention of the hospital. No mention of the surgery. No word about the kids. Just money. And betrayal. He said, "You dropped us like garbage for someone who didn't even raise you." That line stuck with me. Because she was right. Lana didn't raise me. But she showed up. He fed my kids. He made them laugh. He let them feel safe. All my parents ever raised me to be was guilty and small. The next morning I got a Venmo request from my dad. $4,000. No note. Just the amount. That was the moment I realized they didn't actually think I would cut them off. They thought I was bluffing. Maybe angry. Maybe dramatic. But not serious. I didn't just decline the request. I screenshotted it, saved it in a folder I'd labeled evidence, and then blocked both of them everywhere. Phone. Social media. Payment apps. Everything. I wasn't scared of them showing up. They weren't the get on a plane type. They were the sit in a dark room and complain kind. And for the first time in years, the silence felt earned. My daughter crawled into bed with me that night and asked if we could live at the beach forever. I told her maybe. I wasn't lying. We stayed in San Diego for 2 weeks. It felt longer in a good way. Time stretched out differently without appointments, phone calls, or debt hanging over my head. I'd never had space like that before, the kind that doesn't come with guilt attached. We went to the same diner 3 mornings in a row. The waitress started calling my kids her regulars. Lana taught my son how to skim rocks. My daughter collected broken seashells and said they were better than perfect ones because they're stronger. I was healing faster than I expected. Not just physically. I was starting to feel unhooked from something. I didn't know how badly I'd needed that until I felt it. And then one night, just after we put the kids to bed, Lana came into the kitchen holding her phone. She said, "They're reaching out to my sister now." I took her phone and scrolled through the messages. Sure enough, my mom had found Lana's sister on Facebook and sent her a long, panicked message about how I was being manipulated and turning my back on family under the influence of someone with no loyalty. That was how she referred to Lana. A woman who had fed, sheltered, and protected her grandchildren without hesitation. No loyalty. My jaw clenched. Not from surprise. I knew my mother would eventually go there. I was just amazed she could still find new ways to embarrass herself. A few hours later, I got another email. This one wasn't just guilt. It was a threat. She wrote, "If you don't call us back and explain what's going on, we'll have no choice but to involve legal help. We are still entitled to some form of support, especially after everything we've done for you." I had to read it twice. They were threatening legal action for me cutting them off financially. I forwarded it to an attorney the next morning. A woman I'd used years ago when I was dealing with custody stuff. She read it and called me directly, laughing under her breath. "There's no case here," she said. "They have no legal claim to your money, no matter what they believe you owe them emotionally. Block them and live your life." So I did. By then, Lana's sister had told them, politely but firmly, to never contact her again. I changed all my account passwords. Updated my kids' school info to take them off the emergency list. Even talked to a therapist over Zoom about how to set long-term boundaries without slipping back into old patterns. But even with all that, I could feel something building. They'd gone quiet again, the kind of quiet that didn't feel like retreat. It felt like strategy. And then one evening as we packed up for a sunset picnic, I got a notification on my phone. A charge attempt from a shared Costco account I'd forgotten they had access to. It was declined. Then another one. This time from an airline. Then a streaming service. They were trying everything. I could picture it clearly. Them sitting there testing old logins like a pair of teenagers who'd just been grounded. Not for survival. Not for need. Just to get a reaction. They weren't sad. They weren't scared. They were angry that their ATM had stopped working. I closed every account, every backdoor. Froze my credit. Reported one of the charges as fraud. That night, while my kids chased seagulls down the beach and Lana wrapped a hoodie around her waist, I sat on a towel and finally said it out loud. "They're not my family anymore." Lana just nodded. "Good," she said. "So what do you want to do next?" I looked at my kids. The ocean. The fading pink sky. And I smiled. Because I finally had choices. We flew home 3 days later, but not back to where we started. Before the trip, I'd sublet our old apartment, the one with the leaky pipes and too many memories. While I was in the hospital, the new tenants moved in. I hadn't told my parents. Not that I moved, not that I'd left town, not even that I'd recovered. They didn't deserve to know. Instead, we moved into a new place across town. Smaller, cleaner, quiet. The kids got bunk beds. I got a window above the kitchen sink. Lana took the spare room just until she figured things out, but neither of us brought it up again. It felt natural. Easy. Like we'd built a new little orbit. And for a while it stayed that way. Until one afternoon in April. I was picking up the kids from school when my phone buzzed with a voicemail. No caller ID. I let it go, then listened to it in the parking lot with the windows down. It was my mother. Her voice was small, strained. She said she'd heard I was back in town, that they missed the kids, that things got out of hand, and we shouldn't let money come between family. She said my father had been depressed, that they were barely holding on, and then paused like she was expecting me to feel something. Then she said, "We can forget all of this ever happened if you're willing to be reasonable." Reasonable. That word. I sat there in the car while my daughter climbed into the back seat and asked if we could get ice cream. I told her yes. And I deleted the message. A week later she tried again, this time through a friend of a friend, someone who bumped into me at a gas station and said, "Hey, your mom said you guys should talk." I just smiled, said thanks, and changed the subject. Because here's the thing. They weren't trying to apologize. They weren't sorry. They just missed the money, the access, the control. They wanted the version of me who kept giving without being asked. That version didn't exist anymore. Lana knew it before I did. So did my kids. They never asked about their grandparents. Not once. Instead, they asked if Lana could come to parent-teacher night. He said yes. They asked if we could keep having pancake Sundays. We said yes. I went back to work. Not full-time, just enough to stay busy to feel capable. I started saving again. Not for anyone else. For us. One night, my son asked what family really meant. I told him it's the people who show up when it's hard. He thought about it and said, "So Lana's family?" I said yes. And that was the end of it. No fights. No dramatic final phone call. Just a quiet decision. They were out. And we were free. Viola.